WNBA has found itself at the center of controversy once again. And for many fans, the frustration isn't just about what happens during games. It's about how the league and the media choose to talk about the biggest stories. Plenty of people believe that some of the most important conversations are being ignored, while smaller topics receive endless attention. Whether you agree or disagree, that's become one of the biggest debates surrounding the league this season. One moment that really caught people's attention came during WNBA All-Star Weekend. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert spoke with reporters for roughly 20 minutes, answering questions about the league and its future. But according to many observers, including Josh Graham from The Josh Graham Show, one glaring subject never came up. No one asked about Caitlin Clark. Josh Graham said he was genuinely stunned watching the press conference unfold. His point was simple. Regardless of where you stand on Caitlin Clark, she's been at the center of almost every major WNBA conversation this season. From record-breaking attention to controversy, from on-court incidents to fan debates, her name has dominated headlines. So how does a 20-minute media session happen without anyone bringing her up? That's the question a lot of fans have been asking. Think about everything that has surrounded Caitlin Clark over the last few seasons. It's not only about her basketball talent or the crowds she brings into arenas. The conversation has expanded into discussions about physical play, media coverage, social media harassment, fan behavior, player rivalries, and even security concerns. Whether those stories have been positive or negative, they've consistently remained among the league's biggest headlines. One issue that many people believe deserved attention was the real-life stalking incident involving Caitlin Clark. Unlike online arguments or social media drama, this involved an actual individual who was arrested. That's a serious matter for any professional athlete. Some fans expected reporters to ask Cathy Engelbert how the league supports players dealing with situations like that, and what additional protections might be available moving forward. Instead, those questions never came. Another topic that continues generating discussion is the online abuse directed toward Caitlin Clark. Fans have repeatedly pointed out public comments made across social media attacking her personally. Some critics have insulted her appearance, while others have used offensive language. Antonio Brown even made headlines after referring to Caitlin Clark as a man, sparking another wave of backlash online. Many supporters believe league leadership should publicly condemn those kinds of personal attacks regardless of which player is being targeted. Yet critics argue they haven't heard Cathy Engelbert speak strongly enough about those issues. Then there's the conversation about physical play on the court. Caitlin Clark has been involved in several high-profile incidents that continue getting replayed across television and social media. Supporters argue she's taken repeated hard contact that either wasn't called correctly or didn't receive enough punishment from officials. Fans frequently reference plays involving Breanna Stewart, DeJounte Carrington, Kennedy Carter, Marina Mabrey, Diamond DeShields, and Angel Reese as examples that sparked widespread debate. Whether every incident deserved additional penalties is something basketball fans continue arguing about, but many believe the commissioner should have been asked whether player safety remains a concern and whether officiating standards need improvement. Again, according to critics, those questions never surfaced. Another controversy that refuses to disappear involves accusations directed at Caitlin Clark's fan base. Alyssa Thomas has spoken publicly about alleged racial slurs, and Angel Reese has also discussed similar concerns in the past. Those allegations resulted in investigations that ultimately found no evidence supporting the claims. For many observers, that outcome raised even more questions. Critics argue that when accusations receive widespread media coverage, the results of investigations deserve the same level of attention. They believe the public deserves clear communication whenever claims are investigated and no supporting evidence is found. Others maintain that players should always feel comfortable reporting behavior they believe occurred, regardless of the investigation's outcome. The debate remains highly divisive. Brittany Griner also made comments regarding alleged slurs directed toward her and teammates, adding another layer to an already heated discussion. Once again, many fans question why these incidents haven't produced publicly available audio or video evidence, despite games taking place inside packed arenas filled with thousands of spectators and extensive television coverage. Whether those concerns are fair or not, supporters continue asking for greater transparency from the league. The larger criticism, however, isn't necessarily about agreeing with one side or another. It's about whether the media is asking the toughest questions possible. Many fans expected reporters to challenge league leadership on controversial topics involving player safety, harassment, security, officiating, investigations, and public perception. Instead, they believe those opportunities were missed. That's why Josh Graham's comments resonated with so many people. His argument wasn't simply about Caitlin Clark herself, it was about accountability. When the league's biggest stories dominate headlines for months, many expect journalists to raise those issues directly with the commissioner rather than avoiding uncomfortable conversations. As the WNBA continues growing and attracting record attention, these debates aren't likely to disappear anytime soon. If anything, they'll probably become even louder. Fans want answers, critics want accountability, supporters want fairness, and league officials continue facing increasing pressure every time the spotlight gets brighter. Whether Cathy Engelbert and the WNBA media address those concerns more directly in the future remains one of the biggest questions surrounding the league.
Since I walked in the door here, and that's player safety resulting from online abuse and other threats. So with too many players across the WNBA have experienced is unacceptable. In many cases, it's disgusting. The racism, the misogyny, the homophobia, the harassment, and threats directed to our players has no place in sport or anywhere else. This is their workplace. It has no place. So as you all know, because you all cover us, the WNBA is built on inclusion and respect, and those values have defined this league for 30 years. And it will continue to define us for next 30. So earlier this week,
some fans believe the league continues to rely on the same talking points instead of addressing the issues that have dominated headlines throughout the Caitlin Clark era. Whether you agree with those opinions or not, it's clear the conversation isn't slowing down anytime soon. One of the biggest criticisms being raised is the league's repeated emphasis on words like inclusive and welcoming. Critics argue that those statements don't line up with what they believe has actually happened over the past several years. They point to moments where people with different opinions or viewpoints have been heavily criticized or pushed aside and ask whether the league is truly as inclusive as it claims to be. For those critics, that's where the frustration begins. They argue that being inclusive means accepting people with different backgrounds, perspectives, and beliefs, not just those who agree with the majority. Instead, they believe the WNBA has created an environment where certain opinions are welcomed, while others are immediately dismissed. Whether that's a fair characterization is something fans continue debating, but it's become a recurring criticism every time league leadership speaks publicly. One example frequently brought up is the situation involving the Atlanta Dream ownership controversy. Critics argue that ownership changes and political disagreements demonstrated how quickly conflict can arise when people within the league hold different viewpoints. They believe basketball should remain the primary focus, rather than political debates. While others strongly disagree and believe athletes should always have a platform to speak on issues they care about. That disagreement remains one of the league's most polarizing discussions. Then the conversation shifts back to Caitlin Clark. Supporters argue that Clark represents several things that have made her an easy target for criticism. They point to her enormous popularity, her record-breaking college career, and the unprecedented attention she's brought to the league. They believe that instead of celebrating those accomplishments, many conversations surrounding Clark have focused on controversy rather than basketball. Whether that's accurate depends on who you ask, but it's a viewpoint shared by a significant portion of the fan base. Critics also point to Kelsey Plum's early years in the WNBA. Plum entered the league as the NCAA's all-time leading scorer at the time, and was immediately expected to become one of the faces of women's basketball. Over the years, she has spoken about the physical style of play she experienced early in her career, and some fans see parallels between those experiences and what Caitlin Clark has faced. Others argue every young star experiences difficult adjustments, regardless of background. Another name frequently mentioned is Candace Wiggins. Her comments after leaving the WNBA generated widespread discussion years ago, and they continue resurfacing whenever conversations about league culture begin again. Supporters of Wiggins believe her experiences deserve more attention, while critics dispute aspects of her characterization of the league. Once again, opinions remain sharply divided. Another argument made by critics involves the idea of exclusivity itself. Professional sports, by their very nature, are selective. Not everyone can earn a roster spot at the highest level, and competition is what separates professionals from everyone else. Some fans argue that describing professional sports as completely inclusive ignores that basic reality. Their point isn't necessarily that exclusivity is negative. Instead, they argue that elite competition requires high standards, accountability, and performance. Every professional league, whether it's the NBA, NFL, MLB, or WNBA, makes difficult decisions about who earns opportunities and who doesn't. That's simply part of professional sports. Critics also believe Cathy Engelbert relies too heavily on familiar public relations language whenever difficult questions arise. They argue that phrases about inclusion, respect, and community no longer satisfy fans who want direct answers about controversial issues involving player safety, officiating, media narratives, and the treatment of the league's biggest stars. They want specifics rather than general messaging. Another recurring criticism centers around how quickly labels are applied during public debates. Some fans believe people who disagree with popular opinions are too often dismissed instead of having meaningful conversations. They argue that disagreements shouldn't automatically become personal attacks, and that healthy debate should be encouraged rather than discouraged. Whether that's happening fairly remains another major point of disagreement among basketball fans. The discussion eventually circles back to several on-court incidents involving Alyssa Thomas, Marina Mabrey, Diamond DeShields, Kennedy Carter, and Caitlin Clark. Those plays have fueled months of debate about officiating, physicality, and player protection. Supporters of Clark believe league leadership hasn't done enough to address those concerns publicly, while others argue basketball has always been a physical sport, and Clark isn't being treated differently than other stars. Regardless of where fans stand, those incidents continue generating enormous attention. Because of all these ongoing controversies, some critics believe the WNBA needs a significant leadership change. They argue fresh leadership could help rebuild trust with fans, improve communication, and refocus attention on basketball instead of constant controversy. Others disagree completely, arguing that Cathy Engelbert has helped oversee historic business growth, record attendance, increased television ratings, and major commercial partnerships during her tenure. They believe those accomplishments deserve recognition alongside the criticism. Ultimately, this debate goes far beyond one commissioner or one player. It's become a broader conversation about leadership, accountability, transparency, and the future direction of the WNBA. As Caitlin Clark continues to draw unprecedented attention to the league, every decision made by league officials receives greater scrutiny than ever before. Whether Cathy Engelbert remains the right person to lead the WNBA is a question that continues dividing fans across the basketball world. One thing is certain, these discussions aren't ending anytime soon, and every new press conference, interview, or controversial moment only adds another chapter to an already heated debate. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more WNBA coverage.